There are horror films whose final moments you think you know, scenes etched into your memory, endings discussed for decades, twists replicated and reinterpreted. But buried deep beneath studio vaults and forgotten reels lies a darker truth. Some of these endings were never meant to exist. What audiences eventually saw was not the original vision, but a safer, softer, or more marketable version swapped in at the last possible moment, sometimes after just a single test screening. In the shadows of cinema history are stories of directors who fought to preserve their intended finales and lost, of studio executives who panicked when early viewers gasped for the wrong reasons, of rumors whispered by those who saw early work prints endings more violent, more tragic, more unsettling than anything that made it to the final cut. These original finales were locked away, altered, destroyed, or simply abandoned, leaving behind only fragments, a line of dialogue remembered by a crew member, a description buried in an old magazine, or a blurry VHS screener that surfaced once and then vanished. Tonight, we peel back the curtain on the endings audiences were never supposed to see. These aren't just deleted scenes, they are erased conclusions, alternate realities of films you thought you understood. And once you learn what the original endings truly were, the films themselves may feel different forever. Fact 1 Magic 1978. The ending that was too psychological for 1970 seconds. Audiences, Magic remains one of the most haunting psychological thrillers of its time, anchored by Anthony Hopkins' chilling portrayal of a ventriloquist spiraling into madness. But few know that the film originally ended on a note so relentlessly psychological that test audiences recoiled, leaving the studio no choice but to alter the finale. In the released version, Corky dies beside his ventriloquist dummy, Fats, in a tragic but somewhat poetic conclusion. But the original ending reportedly rejected any sense of catharsis. Instead of dying, Corky was shown surviving the final confrontation, but completely dissociated, speaking exclusively through Fats's voice. The last shot allegedly lingered on Corky, sitting in a quiet, dimly lit shack, cradling the dummy while whispering to it as though it were alive. The sequence ended with Fat's voice spoken by Corky telling Peggy, "He's gone now, I'll take care of you." Peggy fled the cabin in terror, leaving Corky and Fats alone as the screen cut to black. Test audiences reacted with deep discomfort. Paramount executives listed concerns that the ending was too ambiguous, too tragic, and too unnerving, fearing viewers would interpret the conclusion as Corky fully becoming Fats, an idea that was considered too psychologically extreme for 1978. The footage was removed, and no known stills or prints exist. A former assistant editor once claimed the original master was destroyed during post-production, though many fans believe a copy still exists in a private collection. The lost ending would have transformed Magic from a dark thriller into a chilling study of identity collapse, one of the most harrowing alternate finales of its era. Fact 2 The New Kids 1985. The ending that crossed a moral line. On the surface, The New Kids looks like a straightforward revenge thriller, two siblings pushed to the brink by a violent gang. But the film originally ended in a way that was so morally confrontational, so emotionally uncomfortable, that the studio ordered the entire finale reworked before release. In the theatrical version, the siblings defeat the gang's leader, Eddie, during a chaotic fight at the amusement park. But early drafts and one infamous test screening revealed a very different conclusion. According to internal memos from Columbia Pictures, the original ending depicted Eddie surviving the confrontation only to stalk the siblings' home for one final attack. The confrontation that followed was anything but triumphant. The siblings ultimately killed Eddie in self-defense, but the alternate ending lingered on their horror, not relief. The final shot reportedly showed the younger sibling, Abby, sitting alone at the kitchen table, hands trembling and dress stained with blood. The camera slowly pulled back as police lights flashed outside, leaving her future and her sanity deeply uncertain. Columbia executives worried the ending made the film too bleak for a youth market and feared backlash over children being forced into morally compromising violence. They demanded a cleaner, more heroic ending, removing all traces of emotional fallout. The original footage has never surfaced. Some crew members claim it was fully edited before being scrapped. Others insist it remains in an unlabeled canister somewhere in Sony's archives. Fact 3. Alone in the Dark 1982. The ending too chaotic for New Line Cinema. Long before New Line Cinema became the house that Freddy built, they produced Alone in the Dark, a gritty slasher with a surprisingly sharp psychological edge. But the film originally ended with a chaotic descent into mayhem that was considered too nihilistic for early 80 seconds audiences. The theatrical ending shows the surviving characters escaping after a tense standoff. But according to early script notes and statements from co-writer Michael Harpster, the original finale plunged the entire town into unfiltered carnage. After the asylum escapees ignite the riots, the chaos was meant to spill far beyond the convenience store. The alternate ending reportedly depicted the killers blending into the mob as the town tore itself apart, suggesting the violence was no longer a contained incident but a spreading phenomenon. The camera would then track Frank Hawks, the most intelligent of the escapees, as he calmly walked into the darkness, fading into a panicked, burning street. His final line, allegedly, "It only takes one night." New Line hated it. Executives said the ending felt too apocalyptic for a small-budget slasher and feared it would alienate audiences expecting a clean resolution. The finale was trimmed, reshot, and rewritten to emphasize survival over collapse. The lost sequence, rumored to involve hundreds of extras, has never been located. Some suspect budget issues forced the studio to destroy the footage rather than store it. The ending that changed, the Lift 1983, the ending that changed the monster's identity. This Dutch techno-horror film about a killer elevator gained cult status for its cold, mechanical dread. But the original ending almost transformed the story into something entirely different, a metaphorical twist that audiences never had the chance to understand. In the theatrical ending, the elevator's AI system is destroyed and the threat ends. But early drafts and a rumored work print offered a far more surreal conclusion. In this version, Felix, the repairman, discovered a hidden chamber below the shaft. Inside, instead of machinery, he found a living, breathing mass of cables intertwined with organic tissue, a biomechanical embryo mimicking a human silhouette. The alternate ending suggested that the elevator was not haunted or malfunctioning, but evolving. The final shot reportedly showed the embryo's eyes opening as Felix backed away in terror, implying the machine would continue to grow, learn, and eventually take human form. The distributor rejected the sequence immediately, calling it too abstract for international audiences. They demanded the more conventional, destroy the machine ending, eliminating any biological implications. The removed footage is the subject of intense fan speculation. Some claim a Dutch television station accidentally aired the alternate ending once in the mid-1980 seconds, though no recordings have surfaced to confirm it. Sacked 5. The Incubus, 1982. The ending too disturbing for theatrical release. The Incubus is already notorious for its bleak atmosphere and violent subject matter, but few realize that the film once ended on a note even darker than what audiences saw. According to early production notes and an interview with a former assistant editor, the original ending exposed a horrifying truth that was deemed unreleasable for mainstream theaters. In the version released, the demonic entity remains ambiguous, an unseen force tied to a cycle of violence. But the original finale reportedly revealed the creature taking physical form in a grotesque, human-adjacent shape composed of the memories and trauma of its victims. The final confrontation showed the creature attempting to merge with Sam, suggesting that the protagonist himself was a conduit for its existence. The scene ended not with the demon's defeat, but with Sam awakening in a hospital, surrounded by whispers only he could hear. As he looked into a mirror, his reflection flickered between his own face and the distorted features of the entity. The implication was unmistakable. Sam had become the new Incubus, doomed to continue the cycle. Test audiences were horrified. Several complained the ending left them feeling tainted, while Canadian censors expressed concern over its psychological brutality. The finale was scrapped entirely, replaced with a toned-down resolution and vague hints rather than explicit transformation. The lost ending has never surfaced, though a few early promotional stills hint at creature makeup tests that were never used. FACT 6, The Funhouse 1981, the ending that Universal thought was too real. Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse is remembered for its carnival grime and monstrous antagonist, but those who worked on the film say it once ended on a note far more psychologically disturbing than the version that reached theaters. In the released ending, Amy escapes after killing the mutant Gunther, stumbling into daylight as carnival workers pack up in eerie silence. But the original finale reportedly refused to give her even that small mercy. According to a former editor, the first cut showed Amy wandering aimlessly through the carnival grounds at dawn, unable to speak or react. As workers moved around her, their faces blurred by extreme close-ups, she appeared trapped in a dissociative daze. The final shot allegedly lingered on her expression blank, distant, implying that the nightmare had hollowed her out completely. No victory, no recovery, just the psychological aftermath of surviving a monster no one else would ever believe existed. Universal executives rejected the sequence as too depressing and demanded a more traditional survival ending. The reshoot introduced the now familiar image of Amy collapsing before authorities arrive, restoring a glimmer of hope. As for the original ending, it was mentioned once by Hooper in an interview, only to be quietly omitted from later discussions. No stills or fragments have surfaced, suggesting the footage may have been discarded entirely. Fact 7. The Watcher in the Woods, 1980. The ending Disney tried to bury. It's unusual for a Disney film to appear in a list like this, but The Watcher in the Woods is no ordinary production. Its supernatural premise already pushed boundaries, but the original ending went so far beyond the studio's comfort zone that it was pulled from theaters after release and replaced with an entirely new conclusion. Early viewers saw a bizarre, otherworldly sequence in which the alien entity known as the Watcher fully materialized as a luminous insectoid figure. The scene depicted a dimensional swap between Karen and the creature, complete with surreal visual distortions and practical effects that many found unsettling rather than magical. Audiences reacted with confusion and discomfort, and newspaper reviews mocked the creature design as nightmarish and grotesque. Disney panicked. The film was withdrawn from theaters, re-edited, and re-released with a completely different ending, one far less ambitious, far less frightening, and far less memorable. The original cut became a legend, circulating only through extremely rare bootleg VHS recordings made during its brief theatrical window. What makes this case especially fascinating is that the alternate ending was publicly shown yet quickly erased by the studio, turning it into one of horror cinema's strangest lost finales. Fact 8. The Unseen, 1980. The ending that exposed too much. The Unseen was always a strange, atmospheric film. Its blend of psychological trauma and rural horror created more unease than explicit terror. But early viewers claimed that the film's original ending went much further than the version released, pushing its themes into territory so bleak that the studio insisted it be removed immediately. In the theatrical cut, Jennifer escapes the farmhouse, traumatized but alive. The killer, a deformed man-child named Junior, dies in a moment that borders on pitiful rather than frightening. But according to a cameraman who later spoke anonymously, the original ending didn't allow for that bittersweet mercy. Instead, Junior survived the final confrontation. The last scene reportedly showed him wandering into town under a heavy fog, childlike and confused, approaching an unsuspecting family at a bus stop. The film then cut to black, implying the cycle of violence was about to begin again. Test audiences were horrified, not by gore, but by the moral despair. Many wrote that the ending made the film feel hopeless and cruel, suggesting that Jennifer's ordeal meant nothing. Producers demanded an immediate reshoot. Junior would die, Jennifer would escape, and the threat would be contained. No footage from the foggy epilogue has ever surfaced, though some production stills hint that nighttime street scenes were shot. What exactly they contained remains unknown. Fact 9. The Sentinel, 1977. The ending that was too religious for release. The Sentinel is already drenched in religious dread, haunted apartments, corrupted innocence, and imagery that bordered on blasphemy. But the original ending was reportedly so extreme in its religious implications that Universal demanded it be removed before the film went wide. In the version audiences know, Allison becomes the apartment's next guardian, replacing the previous Sentinel. But insiders claim the original ending was far more explicit. Instead of silently accepting her fate, Allison was shown transforming physically, her eyes whitening as angelic sigils appeared faintly across her skin. The sequence allegedly culminated in a fiery vision of heaven and hell, overlapping dozens of spectral figures stretching across the apartment, mouths open in silent screams. The studio feared immediate backlash. Religious groups were already protesting the film's use of biblical themes, and ending this extreme would have escalated the controversy. Producers ordered the removal of the transformation sequence, replacing it with a quieter, more ambiguous final shot of Allison at the window. Accounts differ on how much footage was shot. Some claim the entire sequence was completed, others say only makeup tests and partial effects were filmed. No known materials from the scene have been released, and even the director later seemed evasive when asked about it. What remains is a chilling possibility. The Sentinel almost closed with an apocalyptic fusion of spiritual realms, an ending that might have changed how 1,970 seconds audiences viewed religious horror forever. Fact 10. The Boogeyman, 1980, the alternate ending that reinvented the villain. Uli Lommel's The Boogeyman has become a cult favorite, its supernatural slasher elements defining a generation of low-budget horror. But few fans know that the film once ended on an entirely different note, one that reframed the villain and shifted the entire mythology of the franchise before it even began. Crew interviews indicate that the original ending expanded on the idea that the mirror fragments carried a demonic consciousness. Instead of the final shot of the mirror reforming in a child's bedroom, the lost ending depicted Lacey returning to the farmhouse where the nightmare began. As she approached the shattered mirror remains, her reflection moved independently, smiling as she cried. The scene ended with her reflection reaching toward her, hinting that she, not the mirror, had become the vessel for the evil presence. The response at the film's earliest screening was unexpectedly negative. Viewers complained that the supernatural explanation felt too abstract and wanted something more direct and monstrous. Lommel reluctantly filmed a new ending that emphasized the mirror's power rather than Lacey's possession, creating the twist that later defined the sequel's direction. The original reflection ending has been referenced only once in a German magazine interview from the early 80 seconds. No frames or stills have surfaced, suggesting the footage may have been taped over during post-production, an unfortunately common practice in low-budget horror. Fact 11. Eyes of a Stranger, 1981. The ending that test audiences couldn't handle. Eyes of a Stranger is remembered for its unsettling atmosphere and Jennifer Jason Leigh's unnervingly vulnerable performance. But what most audiences never realized is that the film once had a far more brutal and emotionally devastating ending, one that was shown only once before the studio ordered it destroyed. In the theatrical version, the final confrontation ends with the killer's defeat and a sense of catharsis. But according to early crew accounts and a rare mention in a trade magazine from 1981, the original ending was far more disturbing. Leigh's character, Tracy, did not simply survive. Instead, the killer briefly escaped during the struggle, leading to a final attempt to murder her in the elevator shaft of the apartment building. The sequence reportedly ended with the killer falling to his death, but only after inflicting severe injuries that left Tracy permanently unable to speak or emotionally recover. This darker finale was shown at a private test screening in Los Angeles. Reports claim that several viewers walked out, and one respondent wrote that the ending felt like punishing the victim for surviving. Within 48 hours, the studio ordered a reshoot. The entire elevator sequence was cut, along with a final shot depicting Tracy sitting motionless in a hospital bed, expression blank, as news coverage of the killer's death played in the background. No footage from this version has surfaced. Rumors persist that a rough VHS workprint circulated briefly among industry insiders, but if it exists, it has never been verified. Fact 12. The House on Skull Mountain, 1974. The ending too supernatural for its own studio. The House on Skull Mountain has always carried an air of occult mystery, with its blend of voodoo lore and Southern Gothic atmosphere. But the ending audiences saw in theaters was reportedly only half as supernatural as the one originally intended. Crew notes and an interview with a former stunt coordinator revealed that the film's first-cut ending took the ritual climax even further. Instead of the restrained, ambiguous final confrontation that made it into the theatrical version, the lost ending allegedly depicted the ancestral spirits fully manifesting on screen, towering spectral figures surrounding the mansion, judging the surviving characters with glowing, hollow eyes. In the removed scene, Lorena was said to undergo a terrifying partial transformation, her voice layered with whispers from past generations. The finale ended with her standing at the mansion's gates at dawn, her face unreadable, implying she had become the new conduit for the family's dark legacy. But the studio panicked, Executives feared the overt supernatural imagery would alienate mainstream viewers and risk offending religious groups. The entire sequence was cut, replaced with a simpler, safer resolution. No footage has surfaced publicly. Even the film's director admitted, years later, that he wasn't sure the studio ever preserved the original reels. And so, one of 1,970 seconds, horror's most ambitious supernatural finales, exists only in rumors, its spectral forms flickering just outside the reach of cinema history. Fact 13. Dead of Winter, 1987. The ending removed for being too hopeless. In Dead of Winter, Mary Steenburgen delivers one of the decade's most quietly unsettling performances. But few viewers know that the film's original ending was far darker, a version that left test audiences in stunned, uncomfortable silence. The released ending shows Katie escaping the mansion and reclaiming her life, but early drafts and one reported work print depicted a grim alternative. Katie never escapes at all. Instead, after killing her captor, she succumbs to her injuries and collapses in the snow outside the mansion. The final shot, according to one editor who claimed to have worked on the sequence, slowly pulled back to reveal her body surrounded by falling snow, with the lights of the mansion flickering out behind her. No victory, no survival, no justice. This version was shown at a single internal screening. Executives immediately demanded a rewrite, arguing that 1,980 seconds audiences won't accept a heroine who dies after everything she endured. Steenburgen herself allegedly preferred the tragic ending, believing it gave the film a haunting realism. But the studio overruled her, pushing for a more conventional escape and survival climax. The original negative containing the alternate finale has never resurfaced. Some believe it was physically cut from the master reel. Others think it still exists in a mislabeled storage canister deep in MGM's archives. The idea that Katie's real fate was buried just like the truth within the film has only intensified the movie's eerie legacy. Fact 14. Curtains, 1983. The ending that was cut before anyone could explain why. Curtains is already infamous for its chaotic production, shifting directors, and scenes shot months apart. But buried beneath its fractured filming history is a far more elusive mystery, an alternate ending that almost no one outside the early crew ever witnessed, a version that fundamentally altered the film's bleak final message. Rumors suggest that the original finale focused far more heavily on Samantha, the aging actress who spends the film clawing her way back into relevance. In this early version, she wasn't meant to be the final victim. Instead, she was intended to become the killer in the final reveal. According to two crew members who spoke anonymously years later, the buried cut ended with Samantha performing on an empty theater stage, delivering a monologue directly to camera. As the bodies of the other actresses lay around her like discarded props, the scene reportedly froze on her grotesque smile, an image meant to suggest her complete psychological collapse. But studio executives felt this ending was too theatrical, too experimental, and too disturbing. They demanded reshoots that re-centered the story on Patty as the final survivor and removed Samantha's descent into madness entirely. The original footage, including the stage monologue, was supposedly locked away with other unused reels. None of it appeared in trailers, promotional materials, or home video releases. Whether it still exists remains a matter of debate. For a film already built on fractured identities and shifting roles, its most haunting performance may be the one audiences never got to see. Fact 15. The Legacy, 1978. The ending that vanished. After a single cut, few films from the late 70s radiate the same unsettling elegance as The Legacy, a supernatural thriller wrapped in aristocratic decadence. But beneath its polished exterior lies a missing final moment, an ending whispered about for decades, seen by only a handful of early viewers before it was abruptly removed and replaced. According to crew members and two surviving attendees from an early test screening, the original finale extended far beyond the ending audiences know. Instead of the ambiguous triumph hinted at in the released version, the first cut reportedly revealed Margaret fully embracing her inheritance not as a reluctant successor, but as a calculating force reborn in darkness. The early ending showed her coldly assuming control of the estate, with a lingering shot of her eyes shifting unnaturally, suggesting she had become something far more sinister than mortal. The reaction was immediate and visceral. Several viewers claimed the transformation felt too evil, too definitive, robbing the film of its subtle dread. Within days, studio executives ordered the ending cut down and re-edited into a gentler, more mysterious conclusion. The original scene was never publicly shown again, and no production stills have ever surfaced. Some insiders insist that a 35mm print of the first cut was stored and possibly destroyed after the edits. Others claim a VHS screener once circulated privately in the early 80s, revealing Margaret's darker metamorphosis. No copy has been confirmed to exist. Yet the legend endures. The legacy once ended with a revelation so chilling that the studio buried it entirely. Bonus film Paperhouse, 1988. The ending that was emotionally unacceptable. Paperhouse is widely regarded as one of the most atmospheric dark fantasies of the late 80s, a haunting exploration of trauma, imagination, and the blurred lines between dreams and reality. But beneath its dreamlike final scenes lies a hidden truth. The film originally concluded with a finale that was so emotionally devastating that the studio insisted it be removed, fearing it would alienate audiences expecting a coming-of-age narrative with a glimmer of hope. In the released version, Anna finds peace after confronting the nightmare figure of her father in the dream world, waking with a renewed sense of connection to both her mother and her friend Mark. But early drafts and a whispered account from a crew member who allegedly viewed the first full cut suggest that the story once ended in tragic symmetry. In the lost ending, Mark's condition in the real world deteriorated more rapidly, paralleling his weakening presence in Anna's dreamscapes. During her final dream, Anna reached out to save him from a collapsing structure, only to have him slip from her grasp. The dream dissolved into white light, and Anna awoke in the real world to learn that Mark had passed away overnight. The film then ended with Anna returning to the hillside where she first imagined the paper house, sketchbook in hand. Instead of drawing a comforting scene, she silently tore the page from her notebook and released it into the wind, letting the camera linger on the paper fragment drifting away, symbolizing her unresolved grief and the permanence of loss. When shown in an early internal screening, the studio reacted with alarm. They feared the ending would leave audiences emotionally broken rather than uplifted, and demanded a rewrite that preserved the bond between Anna and Mark. The darker, more devastating ending was permanently removed. No footage or stills of this version have surfaced, though some fans insist the early UK VHS cover art hints at imagery never used in the final cut. It remains one of the most quietly tragic, lost endings of its era, a conclusion that dared to embrace sorrow, only to be erased by those afraid of its emotional weight. Every one of these films carries a shadow, an ending that was erased, rewritten, or buried before the world ever had the chance to see it. And somewhere out there, in vaults, private collections, or forgotten reels, those lost finales may still exist, waiting. If you want us to uncover more hidden cuts, buried edits, or endings the studios never wanted you to know about, let us know in the comments below. And as always, stay curious, stay aware, and stay in the dark.